we observe the world, right? Most people in the world are majority, all right, a large majority of the world's population are run by a child consciousness or at best teenage consciousness. Most of us have not matured beyond the teenage consciousness. Most of us are still due to lack of education, lack of proper guidance, we're still operating from teenage consciousness, especially when it comes to emotional growth, emotional development. Just look at how we are interacting with each other in romantic relationships. It shows us how teenage we are, right? When we, when you get into a fight with your partner in a romantic relationship, most of the time, the emotional energies or the emotional state gets the better of us. And we all, just say things like, oh, we're just being emotional. And that's why I did this or did that. But the reality is, if we're going to look at the psychology of it, is that the reality is we were just operating from a teenage, we were not adults, in the fights, in the arguments, we feel angsty, right? When we fight, we attack, and we either attack or we ignore, and we give the silent treatment. All these are teenage behavior, right? I mean, if we want to be really honest with ourselves, we are really, especially in relationships, operating out from teenage consciousness. So most people have not grown up from that. And there is a need for growing up, especially during this time in human history, right? We really need to grow up. We really need to wake up and do the right thing. I read recently a stat somewhere that 1/3 of the world's population are now suffering from mental illness. 1/3. All right. And we cannot pretend to think that people we know, right? People with status, people with high rank, people who are CEOs, CFOs of companies, or people who are well known, are popular on social media, we cannot pretend that they are psychologically well. Many are not. All right. Even people who are running countries, right? World leaders, they are not psychologically well. That's the unfortunate state. And the thing is, it's like the blind leading the blind, right? I mean, if you can't see any better, how would you know? How would you know, right? If you can't see any better, then you're going to think that a person with status, a person with money, a person with many degrees would be the person with most knowledge or should have more power in decision-making process. That's, how most people think. Very rarely do we see people judge, in inverted commas, judge a person by their psychological health. And I feel that it's time for change. We really need to change this. We really need to see people as they truly are. And it begins with self, right? It begins with ourself. How well are we on a psychological level? How well are we in our decision-making process? Are we still operating as children? And, we're like, if you just observe people, right? Running around, pretending to be adults in adult body, but running with child consciousness or teenage consciousness, making life-changing decisions from a child consciousness. That's how the world has been run. And I feel it's gotten to a point of, being so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous that it's so funny, that all I can do is laugh about it, right? So, so why, part of the reason why, I want to help people to grow up, right? To develop their consciousness and to do inner parenting and how important. I also did a search, right? Any hashtags that I use on any social media, when I type in inner parenting or inner parent, the number of times that this hashtag or this phrase has been used is almost like only by thousands, which is not even a 5-figure, which is really interesting. It just shows that no one knows what to look for, even in the search engines, right? No one knows what to look for. So I want to normalize the term inner parenting. I mean, it's been used, of course, in psychological circles, but not enough. People talk about the inner child, not enough people talk about inner parenting. So we need to learn how to inner parent, right? So when we can inner parent, then we can go out there and truly show up in the world and do what is needed and coming from, and we thrive, right, in a healthy way. Now, the unfortunate thing about being healthy psychologically and emotionally is you have to put up with unhealthy people around you. That's the unfortunate thing. All right. And that's why sometimes, time alone is important, right? To retreat back into your space, because you do have to put up with most of the world's population who are still operating, in an unhealthy way, right? So that's how it is. And it's a test of your inner parenting skills, test of your strengths as well, right? So it's a win-win, right? Even though it can be challenging, it is still win-win, okay?